What's up, man?
Hey,
How's it going?
can we do that all over again? Can we start over? This isn't live, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, from the ABC 10 studios, very well dressed, host of the Locked On Kings podcast, our good friend, Matthew George.
Hello.
You wanted me to redo all of that just so you could say hello like that?
Yeah, top of the show. Let's just re-rack it. You know, you'd be better off, honestly, putting Jesse back on the screen. And
Jesse just hit the dump button. We're fine. No one even knows anything happened.
That's fine.
It's all good, my friend. It is all good. Clearly, you're dressed as if you're ready for the return of Sacramento Kings basketball tonight. We were just talking about, and I really didn't think about this till earlier this week. This is Victor Wembanyama's first appearance here in Sacramento.
I'm very excited to see him in person, like just to see, because to me, the NBA has kind of killed the Wemby hype just by forcing the Spurs down our throats on just national television all year long. So to finally be able to actually see him in person for the just crazy athlete and like gifted freak of nature that he is, like people were pointing out too that, like, I guess he was caught on camera talking to Shaq during All-Star weekend, and he made Shaq look like short, which is just incredible. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing Wemby in person. That being said, I don't want to see a competitive basketball game tonight. And I know Domantas Sabonis is likely not playing because of the illness that he has. But, I mean, I put it out there pretty clearly when I saw that report. Like, the Kings have used their get-out-of-jail-free cards. The Kings have used up their wiggle room when it comes to not just losses against bad teams at home. Like, they burnt that when they lost to Charlotte and they lost to Detroit a couple of weeks ago. They've used up their wiggle room to drop winnable games, especially at home, period, with this Western Conference race picking up. So I'm excited to see Victor Wembanyama in person. As soon as the game starts, I want him to look like a rookie against a playoff team. I'm excited to see who steps up for Domantas Sabonis, because Sabonis is consistently the guy that's bringing it every single night. Is it going to be De'Aaron? Is it going to be Malik? Is it going to be a rejuvenated entire Sacramento Kings team? All I know is the only expectation that I have is what you just said. The Kings set the tone, and the Sacramento Kings win this basketball game. And to me, there is a bad way to win this game. They all count the same towards the Kings making the playoffs. But I think tonight is also about sending a message the same way the Kings sent a message coming out of the All-Star break last year. They heard all the noise. They heard all the crap about, hey, this team is inexperienced, and all these experienced playoff teams are gunning for them now. They have a target on their back. They made these moves at the trade deadline. The Kings came out of the All-Star break hotter than anybody else in the league and secured that third seed. You've been there, done that. Do it again. That's what I want to see.
If I were a Sacramento Kings skeptic, this is kind of what Jesse and I were just talking about right now. If I were a skeptic on the Sacramento Kings, be it a fan or a detractor or whatever, how would you sell me on, given the Kings season, the ups, the downs? I think you once had a tweet that I got a chuckle out of. Stop this roller coaster. I'm ready to get off. How would you sell to someone, nah, the Kings are going to be just fine this final 27 games of the season?
Boy, I'd be trying to sell it to myself too, honestly. I think I would lean back on last season's experience, and I would lean on the fact that I still don't think, with the exception of a handful of games, we still haven't seen this team at its best. Now, the counter to that would be, are they ever going to reach that best, right? Are they going to reach that potential? And the answer to that is I have no idea. But this Kings team is still, what are they, 7-8 games over 500, wherever they're at right now, and they have not looked like themselves offensively. The defense is slightly improved. I think you can make a case for, at one point or another throughout this entire season, at least one of the core four Kings players, being the big three and then Malik Monk, has been in a rut. At some point, whether it was Keegan starting off slow, having a really poor month of November, Domantas Sabonis was not necessarily, I mean, he's been playing fine, but he didn't have all the triple doubles and certainly wasn't scoring earlier in the season to the way that he's been scoring recently. Of course, while he's been scoring recently, De'Aaron Fox was in that little bit of a rut, and Fox is starting to climb out of it. Then Malik Monk went through like a 2-week stretch where he wasn't scoring. He's exploded out of it. Keegan Murray is back in a shooting slump, not to mention the disappearing act and appearance of two of your starters in Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter. Like, this Kings team has just not been able to get on the same page yet. But we've seen in games where they are. There was a game at home recently it might have been the Orlando double overtime game. There was a victory at home where the Kings had 4 or 5 players finish with 20-plus points. The Kings consistently win games when they have 5 or 6 players scoring double figures. We haven't seen that as much this year as we saw last year. So the best version of the Kings, I still think, is still yet to come. However, time is running out.
It is. Why? Another. We were just talking. Jesse and I were just talking. This team seems to be like so self-aware, and go back to the earlier media sessions this week with Mike Brown and De'Aaron Fox, and even yesterday with Malik and HB as well. This team is aware of its faults. It's aware of its issues on the defensive end. It's aware of that like ridiculous 3-point defensive percentage stat that is out there, how they're one of the worst in history in terms of guarding the 3-point line. We have talked about the TJ McConnell defense soundbite from Mike Brown, how Mike Brown was talking about how to play defense on TJ McConnell, and it was the exact opposite way that the Sacramento Kings were actually playing defense in the game that just ended. This team seems so self-aware of its issues, but man, it feels like it has a really difficult time of executing what they're talking about.
Yeah, well, first, if I can flex on Sacramento a little bit, Sacramento's radio shows, Sacramento's podcasts, and most importantly, Sacramento's fan base knows ball. So we're clearly pointing out and seeing the same things that everybody else is seeing, and that the Sacramento Kings, their scouting department, their brilliant minds in that organization, plus head coach Mike Brown, and the players themselves are seeing too. So one, we know our team here in Sacramento. Number two is it's like a glass half full, glass half empty way of looking at it, in my opinion. Like the Kings have clear issues that we've identified. We know that if they fix those issues, they're probably well on their way to being a great basketball team. The problem is they have the same clear issues that they cannot seem to address fully. And I think that's kind of how Mike Brown feels to some extent too. I think Mike is also going like, hey guys, he's backed off on his early timeouts this year compared to last year. He's brought up many, many times how he wants to get to a point as a coach. And this is not laziness. This is just in his experience, what it takes. He wants to get to a point as a coach where Steve Kerr was a handful of years ago, where he could sit back and kind of watch and allow the team to handle themselves, allow the team to handle timeouts. Mike has repeatedly taken opportunities to take a step back and allow a player voice to take over a timeout or take over a huddle. And we've seen he's also more than willing to pass off the mic or the torch to his assistant coaches when it's their opportunity or it's in their best interest to help the team at that point in time. So I think that's the thing. I think they know what's wrong. Like we all can see what's wrong. It's just when they're in the trenches, when they're on the floor, when they're actively going through it, there's a disconnect of what they're seeing and strategically how to handle it and actually applying what they've learned, actually applying like the things that you need to do. Now, I think it's a lot easier said than done from the fan perspective, but I think that ultimately speaks to the biggest problem with this Kings roster, and that's the roster. Like this roster has just got its holes. It has its pitfalls. It is not built to fully play the way that Mike Brown and the Sacramento Kings want to play. It's just not. Like this team struggles with perimeter defense, not because these players aren't smart enough to know how to rotate. It's physically, athletically, effort-wise, they're just not built to play that way. Like I think sometimes it's a simple answer, and that's that Mike needs Monty to go out and get some of those guys to help him play the way he wants to play. But that's a problem for tomorrow. That's a problem for this summer. That issue's over. Now you got to build and go with what you got, which is why I think we need to refocus on the offensive end and just live with what you're going to do on defense.
Yeah, I think that's the way a lot of Kings fans feel. And sometimes I wonder if that's the way based on, what was it? The post-trade deadline press conference? Is that when Monty talked? It felt like Monty was like, yeah, let's just get back to playing offense. Hey, I couldn't do anything for you on the defensive end, bro. Just get up and down. Get these dudes in a rhythm to hit a high clip of threes, and let's get to the top 6 and then see what we could do, defensively when we get to the playoffs. But I kind of get the sense that Monty was like, look, man, this is what we have. This is what we got. As a roster, this is what we have. Maybe it's not the defensive juggernaut that we all wanted, but we've got to get back to what we were offensively, because the league has surpassed us. We're not that much worse than we were offensively last year. It's just the league is significantly better. We've got to take a step forward in terms of what we do on the offensive end.
And I think the Kings can hang their hats a little bit more on how they performed in the playoffs defensively too. Like that was a number one
Yeah.
versus number two offense, and both teams defensively looked better than they were offensively. Sacramento makes the shots that they're used to making, or shoots the percentages that they've been shooting all during the regular season. The Kings win that series. So I think there's also an element maybe from Monty, and he might have let it slip with his like we just got to get to the playoffs comment, but like get there and assume or hope or expect your offense to be better while your defense has shown that it can step up and play hard enough and play well enough to be able to win you a series or to be able to handle marquee, prolific offenses like the Golden State Warriors of last year. Now, of course, Steph Curry had the games that he had in the 50-point game that he had, and there was one random game where Draymond beat you. So it's not like defensively the Kings were locked down that entire series. But we all know the Kings did enough defensively to win that series. They did. And offensively, that's what let them down. So I think with this team, you just kind of like you've made your bed, now lay in it. Like you are an offensive powered team. I know Mike doesn't want to be the Mike D'Antoni first or second round playoff exits for 4 straight years. Well, you know what? You've only been a playoff exit for 1 year. Make it to the playoffs again because of your offense. Maybe make some progress and get to year 2, or sorry, the second series, the next round, because of your offense. And then when you get inevitably knocked out, which I think we all believe the Kings are, I would be shocked if the Kings made it past the second round. If they did, great, awesome. That's more fuel for your fire and you have more context. But the whole point to me of this season now is how are you going to perform in this Western Conference playoff race where every single game has tremendous amount of meaning from here on out? And then when you hopefully get back to the playoffs and play in a series again, how much better do you look this year compared to last year? Find out who's for real and who's fallen behind, and you know who to replace this summer.
Yeah, I'm not going to put a ceiling on what Sacramento can do. I'm not going to predict them to win a series or the finals or anything of that sort, but I will say you got to get there.
Yep.
You got to get there. Missing the playoffs would be devastating for a variety of reasons. One, from a just kind of a morale standpoint, but more importantly, that draft pick, that stupid Atlanta Hawks draft pick will just continue to linger around this organization if they miss the playoffs. Just make the playoffs, put that stuff behind you, keep it moving. This is a very, very important offseason one way or another for Monty McNair coming up. But they have a 27-game stretch, as you pointed out, Matt. They excelled incredibly in the post All-Star game stretch last year, and it feels like this isn't the hottest take I'll ever have. Man, it might just center around De'Aaron Fox again. Like Domas has been phenomenal. You're going to need something from multiple guys. Everybody can't keep disappearing at the same time, but it starts with De'Aaron Fox. And if he's closer to that 28, 29, 30-point per game scorer, I think the Sacramento Kings are in great shape. If he's closer to the 22, 23-point per game scorer, I think that's a tough gamble for Sacramento.
The Luke Walton saying lives on, the head of the snake. I mean, it's just who De'Aaron is and who he has to be for this team. There are good enough players, and this roster is talented enough to where De'Aaron doesn't have to be perfect every single night for the Kings to have a chance. That's the good news. The bad news is like the wiggle room for De'Aaron, just like the wiggle room for the Sacramento Kings, is cooked. Like your safety net is cooked. De'Aaron has to be, hopefully, knock on wood, he doesn't get injured or anything like that, or have any more lingering injury issues than what he's already been battling with. But De'Aaron, he has to be the start of the season De'Aaron, in my opinion, for the Kings to make the playoffs, or just secure the playoffs outright. You want to avoid the play-in at all costs, because we all have the doomsday scenario in our head of a play-in game against the Golden State Warriors where we're all literally going to throw up regardless of how that game goes. We're just not – nobody wants to see it. Literally nobody. I promise you the Warriors don't want to see it either. Like
those games against the Warriors are vomit-inducing for sure.
So you want to avoid that at all costs, and you're absolutely right. It's going to be De'Aaron to take you there. But also, like, this team really doesn't make excuses. We try and come up with explanations that borderline excuse from time to time. I don't want to hear anything involving fatigue or mental fatigue, physical fatigue, nothing for the remainder of this season, and certainly nothing tonight. I think Jesse put it best before I hopped on. Like, there should be absolutely zero coming out flat for the Kings tonight against San Antonio. At home, you know what's at stake. Go out and send a message. Like, that is the most inexcusable thing that the Sacramento Kings can do, and I hope to God that this is the last we talk about it.
Confident they will?
Yes, I do. I believe in this team, and I believe that they recognize what's at stake, and this team typically performs when they're at stake. I'm looking forward to the pregame press conference too, because I'm going to ask Mike Brown about what he learned or what he remembers from how they came out of the All-Star break last season and how they can replicate that or what's different this time compared to that time. Because knowing Mike, he'll give an insightful answer. So we'll keep an eye out for that.
Matt George, know you had to scramble around a little bit to join us today, so appreciate you as always. Locked On Kings podcast, of course, ABC 10 as well. I'm going to head over to 102.5 for a little bit. You're welcome to join me. We'll run it back here next. More Kings coverage ahead on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320. Good stuff. Thanks, Matt.
Hey, sorry about that.
No, you're fine. You're fine. No problem at all.
Question for any mechanics out there. Why are tires so expensive?
Oh, Jesus.
I had to get 4 tires done. It was over $800.
Yeah, that's a monster.
Jesus.
That's a monster. All right, man. I'm going to take care of my responsibilities over there, and I'll see you tonight, actually.
Oh, sweet. See you there.